All right, everyone, welcome to Lesson 2 of Chapter 13 of our California history book. Yesterday, last lesson, we talked about some basics of state government of California. Now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the three parts of the state government. So remember, we have the state government, we have local government. Now we're going to talk a little bit more detail about how the state government works. There are three main parts of the state government. And if you look on page 247 is where our lesson begins. We have a lot of vocabulary terms today. So please pay careful attention. Be watching with your eyes for all of the words that are bold. And be paying careful attention. They're going to give us a lot of definitions. All right? We're going to be learning a lot today. So just to do a brief overview of the vocabulary, here they are. We have the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. Those are the three parts of the state government. Branches are like branches coming off of a tree. So there's the tree of government, and it splits into these three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. We're going to talk about what those mean, what those words mean. We also have assembly, we have senate, we have senators, we have a bill, we have veto, we have the lieutenant governor, and Supreme Court. So we have lots of terms, lots of things to learn today, so please pay careful attention. You might even want to watch this video twice in case you missed something the first time around. So here we go. Page 247, I will begin reading at the branches of state government. So our state government has three parts. One is the legislative branch, another is the executive branch, the third is the judicial branch. So, the legislative branch. The laws of California are made by the legislative branch. This branch is divided into two parts. So we've got these three branches, and then the legislative branch branches off into two more parts. One part of the legislative branch, so this part here, is called the assembly. It has 80 members. This is because the state is divided into 80 parts. Each part is almost equal in population. These parts are called districts. Each assembly district chooses a person to the assembly. A member is chosen for a 2-year term. The assembly speaker runs the meetings of the assembly. The speaker is chosen by the members of the assembly. The assembly has a special room in the state capitol. The other part, so this part, we have the legislative branch here split into two parts, the assembly, and then the Senate. The other part of the legislative branch is called the Senate. The Senate has 40 members called senators. Each senator represents a senatorial district. Each district is almost equal in population. A senator is elected for a 4-year term. The Senate also has a special room in the state capitol. So the Assembly and the Senate, they each have their special room. There are 80 members of the Assembly. There are 40 senators. Assembly members are elected for 2 years, and then you have to vote for a new one. And senators are voted for 4 years, and then you have to elect a new one. The members of both the Assembly and the Senate must approve a bill. What is a bill, you might ask? Well, it says in the next sentence, a bill is a possible law. The bill can then be sent to the governor for a signature. If the governor signs the bill, so he puts his signature at the bottom and says, I approve of this bill. If the governor signs the bill, it becomes a law. However, the governor may decide not to sign the bill. Maybe he doesn't like it. He doesn't think it's a good bill. This has a special name. This is called a veto. If this happens, both the Assembly and the Senate must vote on the bill again. Each must pass the bill by a 2/3 vote for the bill to become law. So, if you look on page 248, you have a bunch of pictures, almost like a comic book type thing. At the very top, we have this picture. This is where we start. Number 1. Number 1 says, a member of the Assembly or Senate writes a bill. So maybe your assemblyman or your state senator has an idea. And he says, it would be great, let's make up a bill. It would be great if everyone named Annabelle got $500 in the state of California. Because I have a good friend named Annabelle. She goes to school, and she's in Mr. Erickson's class at CCA, and she's great, and I think that everyone named Annabelle should get $500 in the state of California. Let's just say that's what he decides to write. So he writes out, maybe not by hand, maybe he types it out, and types out this proposed law. So the Assembly and the Senate then all get copies. Everyone gets a copy of that, and they read it, and they think, okay, is this something I like? Is this something I would like to become law? Maybe some of them say yes. Maybe some of them say no. Maybe some of them says, yes, Annabelle is great. She's really good. Maybe some of them say, this isn't fair at all. What about people who have other names? Right? So some vote to say yes, some vote to say no. But let's say that there are more votes for yes than for no. And then that bill, we say, moves out of the Assembly and the Senate, and the governor gets a copy of that bill, and they put it right on his desk. And so he reads it, and he reads all of the parts of the law. Reading it, okay, Annabelle, yeah, she gets the fun. Okay. Then there's a big line at the bottom for his signature. If he signs it, it becomes law, and everyone named Annabelle gets $500. But the governor reads that, and he says, this is not fair at all. This is not a good law. I refuse to sign this. And so he doesn't sign it. He sends it back to the Assembly and the Senate. And what the Assembly and the Senate have to do is they have to vote again on the bill. It gets a second chance. It's not done yet. In order to get the bill to the desk of the governor, just more people have to vote for it than against it. So in our classroom, we would need 4 people. If we were the Assembly in our classroom, we would need 4 students to vote for the bill. Even if 3 voted against it, there's a majority. 4 is greater than 3, and there's only 7 of you students. So that means it would be approved, and it would go to the desk of the governor. Let's say I'm pretending to be the governor. It would come to my desk, and then I would say okay or no. If I said no, it would go back to you, and at least 2/3 of you would have to vote for it. So not just a simple majority. So in the case of the Senate, right, you would just need 21 people to vote for it the first time because there's 40 senators. 21 would give you the majority. What is 2/3 of 40? Let's figure this out. I don't have anywhere to write, so I'm just going to do it on my calculator here. In order for it to pass the second time, after the governor vetoes the bill, they have to have 2/3 of the Senate vote for it, so they need at least 27 people to vote for it, because that's 2/3. So they need more people to vote for it. So if the Senate and the Assembly think it's a really good thing and they get a lot of people to vote for it, then it becomes a law anyways. So that's how the process of a bill becomes law. That's how this happens in California. It's actually very similar in the United States legislature. So that's the legislative branch. We have assemblymen, we have senators, and they make laws. They write bills that hopefully eventually will become laws. So the second branch of government is called the executive branch, and the governor is the head of the executive branch of government. So this part of the government is in charge of carrying out the laws. So they don't actually write the laws, they just enforce them. So, you've heard me say, I don't make the rules, I just enforce them. Or maybe you've heard someone else say that. That's the executive branch's job. So, the governor is chosen for a 4-year term. Sorry, we're on page 249 again. The governor may sign or veto a bill, and this person also appoints people to important jobs in the state government. The governor is the leader of the state. We also have, here's another vocabulary word, the lieutenant governor. The lieutenant governor takes over the governor's duties when the governor is not available to do the job. The lieutenant governor is the leader of the Senate. So, remember we have the senators? The person in charge of all the senators is called the lieutenant governor. And if the governor can't do his job for some reason, the lieutenant governor is the one who takes over. And you actually see a picture of the assembly room in the California state capitol in Sacramento. There. So that's the executive branch. So they're in charge of the government, of enforcing the laws, but they don't get to write the laws. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's important that the people who enforce the laws are not the ones who get to write the laws? This was actually a pretty new idea when America first became a country. It's what set apart the United States from other countries. If you had a king, guess what? The king makes the laws. The king enforces the laws. And as we're going to talk about in a second with the judicial branch, the king is the one who ultimately decides whether or not you're breaking the law. So that's a lot of power for one person to hold. And it can turn bad pretty quickly. If you have an evil king, he can do a lot of damage because he's in charge of everything. What the founders of the United States and the founders of California eventually thought is, what if we divided all those powers up and gave them to different people? So each person only gets one job. They don't get to do all of it. That might make it more difficult for one person to take over a whole country and ruin it. Now, if you have a good king, the good king can get a lot done because they hold all the power. So you're not able to have a whole lot of power in one place to get things done quickly. That's why it takes many months or years for laws to get passed sometimes. But on the other hand, you're not going to have one person ruining the government. You don't have that risk anymore because the power is divided up. We call it the separation of powers or balance of government. Okay, sorry, back to page 249. Sorry, I just find this so interesting. I could talk about this forever. And indeed, you might take a class in high school or college where all you talk about for a year is the government of the United States and your state. All right, 249, the third branch of government, the judicial branch. This branch of government, the branch of government that interprets or explains the laws, is called the judicial branch. Judicial has to do with judges. They've got the same root word. This branch of government decides if a law has been broken. So, the state Supreme Court is the highest court in the state. It is made up of a chief justice or judge and 6 associate justices. A justice is appointed by the governor and approved by the voters. A justice serves a term of 12 years. So you get to be a Supreme Court justice for 12 years. Remember in our Bible lesson when we were talking about the daughters of Zelophehad and they wanted to make sure that they had an inheritance in the land of Israel? And remember, Zelophehad's brothers didn't really like that idea. They had an objection. They said, but what if these daughters marry someone from another tribe and then our land gets, given to their tribe, but it's our land. They appealed Moses' decision. And that's the same thing that happens in courtrooms with judges. What happens if you don't like a decision that a judge gives you in your case? Maybe it's a criminal trial, maybe, someone has taken something of yours. Maybe it's something similar to what Moses was dealing with in our Bible story. Maybe someone has a really good objection. They said, but what about this case? You can appeal your case to a higher court. So if you don't like your decision here, you appeal to a higher court. If you don't like their decision, you can appeal to an even higher court. Eventually, you get to the state Supreme Court. And that's what we were just talking about. That's the highest court in California. And eventually, well, I won't get into that, but there is also a United States Supreme Court as well. And they have the ultimate say over what can and cannot be done in the United States. All right, last but not least, other state officers. There are a number of other officers in the state government. The Attorney General is the chief legal advisor in the state. So he is the highest lawyer in the whole state, and he advises the state on what is legal or not to do. The Secretary of State keeps all the state records and directs state elections. So when you get married, you have to send a form to the Secretary of State, who keeps track that you were married. Or when someone is born, this Secretary of State keeps track of who's born. And so who all is living in the state, all the sorts of things that pertain to keeping records. The Controller controls and accounts for the state's income and spending, so they're in charge of all the money. And the state treasurer is the banker of the state's money. So I should say the controller and the treasurer work kind of hand in hand. The treasurer has the ultimate say over the money, but the controller gets to decide where to put it, what needs to get spent where, and things like that. And the superintendent of public instruction is the chief school officer of California. So that person is in charge of all of the public schools in the state of California. All right, one last little section on page 250. Excuse me. Federal officers from California. So, one president of the United States is a former governor of California. Ronald Reagan was governor from 1967 until 1975. So Ronald Reagan was which president? Was he the 40th president? He was the 40th president, wasn't he? Donald Trump is the 45th. Obama is the 44th. George Bush is 43rd. Bill Clinton is 42nd. 41. Yeah, 40th. That's what I thought. The 40th president of the United States was once the governor of California. In fact, he was elected for 2 terms, so he served for 4 years. He was up for election again in 1984, ran and won again. And when he started his campaign for the re-election in 1984, his very first campaign stop, his announcement of the start of his campaign, was held in Miles Square Park, just down the street from CCA. There was a big, meeting. Lots of people attended. I forget. It was a lot. I can't remember the number. But that's where he announced that he was running for president yet again. Right? Just within walking distance of the school. Let's see. Where was I? Another governor of California, Earl Warren, became head of the United States Supreme Court. He was governor of California from 1943 until 1953. And there were 2 other presidents from California. They are Herbert Hoover and Richard M. Nixon. Hoover was president of the United States from 1929 until 1933, and Nixon was president of the United States from 1969 until 1974. And Nixon was from Yorba Linda, which is not too far, and he's got a presidential library in Yorba Linda with different things about his presidency, and also it's a library full of books, too. I've never been, but someday I do want to go. I believe there is an Apollo capsule from one of the moon missions there, because Nixon was the president when we first landed on the moon. Okay, checkup. Question 1. How many parts of the legislative branch, into how many parts is the legislative branch divided? Name the parts. Name the parts. Question 2. What happens when the governor signs a bill? What happens when a governor signs a bill? And number 3. Why is the judicial branch of government important? Why is the judicial branch so important? That's our lesson for today. A little bit longer, but we had a lot of information, jam-packed with information today. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. We'll talk soon.